And then I saw her face, and I'm a believer, and not a trace of doubt in my mind. I'm in love.
Hey guys, CWatchD here, and I am back with another reaction video. And today I'm going to be reacting to another MLP Fanfic reading by TheLostNarrator. It's called A Beloved's Curse. And this one is a grimdark fic, so yeah, this should be interesting. Yeah, some people say that this is like the sequel to The Tale of the Lost Narrator, so let's see if it is. Anyways, let's jump it in! The Lost Narrator's Hallowed Horrors.
Today still think that this story of the Lost Narrator is just an old pony tale. The Lost Narrator became a piece of history and myth and lore.
Alright, here's the
She is
narrator.
a narrator of stories, and those who hear them are lost. Or maybe she narrates stories because she herself is lost. Hardly any pony remembers Curse Word, the odd, lonely pony who left her hometown and never came back. She is a something, not a some pony. She's just fear and regret and dark bitterness masquerading as a do-gooding incarnate. She is a lost soul, but still, her fate is nothing compared to the loss of a beloved.
Oh, okay, so this is just an intro?
Hey there. It's alright, no need to freak out.
Oh, there's
you
Meg.
are. See? That wasn't too bad, was it? Ponies tend to hype up the transition all the time as this big, terrifying process, and really, it's more like, well, that. Don't worry, that strange, airy feeling will go away any second. And there we go. I see that look on your face. You don't know me, and, well, you're not really supposed to. I'll just get that out right off the bat. It's always the same questions, really. Where am I? Who are you? What was up with Miss Masky Pants and all of her...
Masky Pants?
Well, I'm stopping this one before it happens and answering all of the questions so you don't have to pester me. Okay? My name is... Well, my name doesn't really matter, since no pony can remember it.
Well, your name is
I'm
Magpie
just gonna
Pony,
come right out and say it.
the creator
I'm the pony that she
of
referred
Pinky
to
Tails
as Beloved.
and Princess Trixie
No,
Sparkle.
that's not my actual name,
Oh
but
boy.
I think it's more of
Can't
a
wait for the
nice
finale
term.
of
It's better
Princess
than my
Trixie
real name
Sparkle. It's
anyway.
gonna be so epic.
Oh, did I not tell you? You're supposed to follow me, silly. Come on. I know the way. I've only walked it like 1,000,000 times. What's one more? And don't worry, I don't bite. I'm just that sort of in-between guide, I guess you could say. Things in the afterlife have to be all complicated. You can't just go from one place to the other. You have to journey there. It's strange, but it's true. One of the ponies who passed through here once called it purgatory. I like saying that. Purgatory.
Purgatory.
Sounds kind of neat.
Yeah, it is a kind of a neat
yeah,
name.
I'm not an angel. Though I did pretend to be one a couple of times. I even tried the whole thee, thy, thou thing. But it kind of blew up in my face when I accidentally let out a not-so-angelic word. Oh well. So by this point you're thinking, well, I'm dead. And I'm following Curse Word's dead lover to wherever I'm supposed to go. This totally isn't weird at all. Since we have nothing but time up here, I guess it would probably be a good idea if I fill in the gaps. Some ponies like to hear the whole story. They said it makes their death seem more fulfilled, I guess. Like they're the only ones in on this big magical secret about where Curse Word's lover is, and they know things that she doesn't. Kinda takes the sting out of dying a little, don't you think? So... Once upon a time, a cute little filly was born, and a bunch of stuff happened. The end.
Oh gosh.
Riveting, right?
Does this seem like a rip-off of Pinky
I'll tell you
Tails?
the real story. I just like to see ponies' faces after I hype it up, and then I give them that. I came from... You know what? It doesn't really matter where I came from. None of the other events, moments, compared to when I met Curse Word. It's probably the first and the only really true best moment in my past of any consequence. I ended up in that little town, homeless. Don't ask me why, and don't give me pity. I wasn't some kind of beggar pony, I just didn't have a literal home. I was a wanderer. This was the first place that I felt safe. That little town had some real potential to be a home if I could just manage to get some work there. I searched all over for some kind of job, but as usual, I found myself gravitating towards bookstores and libraries. Oh, didn't you see my cutie mark? Yeah, I guess I was something of a writer. Doubt you'd know many of my stories.
Sorry
though.
if you hear
Eventually,
noises in the
I
background.
found
It's my
the
family
library,
talking.
And I met the paradox of a pony that was the librarian. She never had a kind word to say to me, nor did a kind deed, outside of hiring me that day. You know, I'm not even sure why she did it, though I suspect that she had some kind of intern that couldn't take her attitude and left in a huff before I showed up. Either way, she was a real pain. But I was happy enough
Bless
to
me,
have
guys.
somewhere to belong. Then I saw her. I know, that sounds really cliche, but you're dead and I'm cursed, so if that's not cliche, I don't know what is. She was
I'm dead?
just so different from other ponies that I'd seen. I had some
How long is this scene with
difficulties trusting
Magpie?
ponies those days, but I felt myself gravitating towards this storyteller. I wished you could have seen the way those foals' eyes lit up when she brought to life the story she wove. It was like witnessing miniature fairy tales coming true right there in the comfort of the library. If I wasn't in love with this town before, I certainly was then. I honestly didn't plan on talking to her that day. I was a little too shy to do so. Actually, a lot of shy. I had a hard time back then talking to other ponies in the library, or even just any ponies in general. It was during that time that I tended to keep to myself more than anything, so when I caught her eyeing me from across the room as she was telling a story to the foals, you can imagine how nervous I was. Now that I think about it, I don't even remember the story she was telling at the time, but I do remember the look in her eyes. They were gentle, deep-set. She would close her eyes and let the magic just engulf the foals as she brought the scene to life for them. And as their little hearts filled with magic, she opened her eyes and smiled back at me. It's funny because even now, just thinking about that, I still get the warm fuzzies. After she had finished her time with the foals, she trotted over. She wasn't afraid to introduce herself, and soon enough, she gave me the gossip about the boss I already hated. She was so charming, I guess is the word, and I was so frazzled. I wasn't used to some pony being kind right off the bat.
You know, this art of
Still, I know you can
Magpie
clearly
is
tell that
pretty
I'm a talker,
unique.
so it didn't
Just,
take long to pretty much get me to
thin
spill the
neck
important
and
bullet points of my story.
Big ears.
She didn't seem bored or deterred by it either, which for me was another odd
We
thing.
can't even see her hooves at all.
Before I ended up in that little town, I wasn't really allowed to talk so much, so it was nice. Have you ever heard that saying, mare friends move in on the second date? Well, I think we kind of started that one. She found out that I was staying in a not-so-great place. Won't go into details on that. And she opened her door. Just like that. She insisted, since I didn't really have anywhere else to go. And I was a proper roommate. I did my share and more of the cleaning and the cooking, kind of hoping that would compensate for the quick move. And soon enough, it was as if we'd lived in that little house together all along, and we just didn't know it. It just came naturally, I guess. Did you know that I'm actually the first pony to figure out curse words, special talent? The real special talent? Maybe it was my love of puns that made me realize it's the words themselves that could curse.
I recognize that
And
line.
I knew that because of her eyes.
It was one of the
Now,
Hollow
before you go
Fanfic
thinking she
videos.
was always destined to ruin lives with that talent of hers, you should know. The talent was what made that town so perfect. Her power was good, and she used it for good. She just didn't know it existed, and I didn't want to upset the balance. She was kind of oblivious to things around her. Sometimes I swear she just thought she lived in this little bubble with her and I, and nothing else mattered, but I paid attention. There were little changes for other ponies here and there, or even changes to the town itself, and it was always just for the better. I saw her causing this, just by her mere words. If she said and willed it to be, it came true. And her eyes were the biggest indication that something awesome was about to happen. So knowing all of this, I didn't want to give her the weight of the responsibility of her own gift. I kind of took it upon myself instead. If there was something that needed a little love or happiness, I would just steer her in the right direction, and somehow her magic would just do the rest. Of course, living with her, I got to see firsthand how amazing that power was, but it wasn't the power that I loved. It was her. She had one of the kindest and most giving hearts of any pony in that town, and for some reason she loved me. There was never a single doubt in my mind just how much Kirsty loved me. She really did mean it when she said with her whole heart. To be honest, I still wonder to this day what a mare like her even saw in me. So far, everything's all happy, bright, and cheerful, isn't it? Well, you're dead, so I didn't want the first thing you heard to be dark and depressing. I guess, though, this is the part of the story that gets a little on the plot twist side. I mean, nothing in life is perfect, so there has to be a catch-22 somewhere. It's not like Curse could just keep everything perfect forever. That's not how life works. This life we had built, and this town that was a slice of heaven was suddenly tainted. It was stained, like when you drop an inkwell on your coat. Kirsty's coat was darker than mine, so it wouldn't be as obvious, but when I would drop just even the tiniest bit of ink on my pink coat, well, it wouldn't come out for weeks. It was kind of
Yeah, I kind of like the pink coat that Mag has.
I finally found a place to call my own. It was mine.
It kind of actually
and she showed
glows.
Up. Just another one of the mothers dropping her full off for one of the famous storytellings at the library. She didn't even see me, nor did she see the pile of books that suddenly dropped along with my stomach. I wanted to run. I didn't want to be there anymore. I could feel my heart wanting to jump into my throat, and that moment, I had just found this place, and now I felt like I needed to flee from it. But I couldn't leave Curse. So I did the only other thing a logical and rational-minded mare would do. I stalked her home to see where she lived. And there it was, the perfect little house on the perfect little lane, so perfectly placed in the heart of her perfect little world. A pretty little garden with perfect rows of flowers out front, and white painted shutters that perfectly matched the cream color of her house. It was so perfectly sickening. And fate loves to deal all the perfect little cards at once, right? I just happened to see her new little house stallion greet her out front with nothing but smiles. Smiles. I don't even know how she scored a stallion like that. She had once told me she would never be with a stallion in all of her life. So for her, this... Oh, you don't know what house stallion means, do you?
House stallion?
Not a familiar term.
Yeah, not at all.
But trust me, if there was a working pony in that household, it would be her. For his sake, I prayed he could at least cook. I remember getting home that night and just how agitated and closed off I was from Curse. She couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, and it really took a toll on her. I kept trying to convince her that I was alright, and trying to force my brain to move on, but it just wouldn't. I thought I'd been healing, moving forward, that I was past all of this, but I wasn't. The thought of her just breathing the same air as me in that town made my stomach clench. I was running and hiding. I had done everything in my power to get away from that mare, and now that I'd been found, in a sense, all those fears just came crawling back like those black ink stains that never really fade away. I wanted that town to just be mine and Curse's. I didn't need her there, spreading like some black, cancerous being that I could never escape from. That night, Curse insisted on helping in some way. She hated seeing me so distraught and unnerved. It didn't help that I closed myself off to her about what was really wrong. I just kept repeating myself to her. There was nothing she could do. But even in saying that, she said she'd figure out a way. If that mare could move mountains for me, she would have. But in that moment, I realized there kind of was a way that she could help. You see, Curse's magic wasn't always for good. Well, obviously. Her moods often reflected mine. If I'd had a horrible nightmare or something and I closed myself off to her, it would dishearten her. My moods always seemed to spread onto her, no matter how hard I tried to keep her away from my thoughts and emotions. This would usually leave her in a pretty sour mood. The first time I can remember it actually happening,
loss can
she
get
was
pretty
trying to
sour
cross
at
the road
times.
towards the library, and this wagon ran past us, nearly trampling her and I both. I remember she screamed at the stallion pulling the wagon. "You almost hit us, you prick! I hope you crash that thing!" I do a pretty good curse word impression, don't you think? It was then that her eyes did that shimmer thing, and I knew that this meant trouble. I don't think the stallion heard her over the rumble of his wheels, but once Curse was in the library, the wagon actually did crash. I watched it go straight into a ravine. The poor stallion's possessions were scattered to the wind. He was okay, but I was shocked,
Excuse
to
me?
say the least. But it didn't take long for the shock to wear off before I realized this might be the thing I need to finally move on with my life. This, Curse's power. I could use it to shatter her perfect little world. I could be free from all those sleepless nights trying to forget a past that continued to creep into my mind. I could actually move on, be a functioning mare, be a better mare friend for Curse. I wanted that more than anything. It'd have to be clever, though. Something she couldn't trace back to me, if or when she ever did see me. Trust me, I was an expert at hide and don't seek. I fought long and hard for a way to ruin her, but it wasn't until I watched her drop off her foal that it finally hit me like a brick wall. Her colt. He was just like all the other foals enchanted by my Cursey's stories. He'd do anything to impress her. And I would do anything to ruin his mother's life. See, Curse was in one of those moods again, and I kind of waited until she was. The night before, I lied to her. I woke up in the middle of the night claiming to have another nightmare, and she, of course, wanted to stay up with me and try to help. I purposely closed myself off to her so that it would upset her. I know that sounds terrible, but I had my reasons. It helped that she was already kind of up in hooves over the fact that one of her foal's parents had complained. One of the recent stories she told was a bit too dark for their liking. She was so excited about the stories I had written, I think she might have accidentally taken some influence from them unintentionally. If there was one thing Curseword couldn't stand, though, it was being told that a story was bad and being told what to tell next. So I may have suggested to that little colt that he insist on a new story for her to tell. It just kind of worked to my benefit that he didn't like the ones she was telling at the time anyway. And I also may have told him to use colorful language that he'd heard her use a few times
Oh,
when
how
she
colorful
thought
it
she was
is.
out of earshot. I mean, come on, her name is Curseword. To some degree, I thought she might get a good laugh out of that. On a good day. But this wasn't a good day. So instead, she snapped. The way she glared at that little colt. Her eyes have never been that bright before. They almost glowed a fiery red, so much that the little colt could have just burst into flames at that moment. I'd never seen her that angry before. I know Curse. Even though she threatened him with his mother and soap, she would have ripped into that child. But it was all worth it to me at the time. I didn't care. I wanted to ensure that I got results.
Never at all? Totally
Later
don't
that
blame
night,
you,
I made
Meg.
Curse dinner, and I tried my best to comfort her, but it was kind of hard to do based on the fact that I was over the moon. It was just a matter of time now. I could imagine the next day hearing from the locals that the little colt had broken his foreleg or something. Anything.
Oh,
Anything to shatter
some
that
kind of colt
perfect
broke their
little
leg?
world of hers. I wanted to relish in her agony. And I did. That night, I was pretending to be sleeping. I finally heard the scream, the one that I had been waiting to hear since I planned this. I'd never felt so much satisfaction and relief all at once. I heard her panicked, terrified wails echo through the town, and for once, she was the one who was hurt. She was the one who was crying and distraught. She was the one who was ruined. But then I heard that little colt scream. It hit me. His high, piercing screams I still can't seem to forget to this day. Why was he screaming? What exactly had Curse's power done? Something had happened and I caused this. I'd have given anything to take it back.
You caused that?
Curse was the one shaking me awake to see if I'd heard it. She insisted something was wrong and that we needed to follow the screams. I raced with her through the town to see what had become of the poor thing, and... well, this part you know. I couldn't bring myself to go upstairs with her to see what had happened. I could hear curse words screaming, demanding to know why. It was then that I heard a thud and a crash. I remember how silent everything was after that. Deafening, and it lingered over that whole night. Curse slowly came back down as we waited outside for the authorities and the other townspeople.
Respect my authority!
She told me that she had punched the mare upstairs and knocked her out. If I had known it was that easy, I would have just told her everything from the beginning. I still remember the look on her face. She blamed herself for this. All of it. Things got worse from there. I receded, punishing myself in silence for the horrendous act that I had created. It was all my fault, and I couldn't bring myself to tell Curse. I couldn't tell any pony what I'd done. If I did, Curse would have been at fault as well, and I didn't want to ruin what little we did have left of this perfect life. Yes, she was now being punished for murdering her own foal, but at what cost? Not only did I end a precious, innocent life, but now Curse, she'd been tainted. Not to mention she was aware of it now, her power, and became obsessed with it. All that time I tried to keep the burden from her shoulders was for nothing, and no matter what I tried, she wouldn't let it go. She just kept going on and on and on about it. It was cute that she thought I had no clue.
Was it that cute?
There were so many secrets between the two of us. It seemed so perfect on the outside, but deep down we held on to these stupid secrets because we thought it would hurt one another if we knew the truth. When you have time, like me, to think things over, eventually everything seems to become crystal clear. The night when it happened, I remember that probably clearer than anything else. It was our anniversary. We always celebrated it. It meant so much to her too, considering how she was with me. She never, and I mean never, forgot about that. How could she? It was silly for me to get so upset about that, and at that point, she had just reached her limit. She wasn't taking care of herself, and she was so paranoid about everything she did. She closed herself off, and I just couldn't sit there and take it anymore. I mean, I worked so hard that night to try and cheer her up. But when she showed up at the door with nothing except a dumbfounded look on her face, I just lost it. I got so frustrated and angry. But when I really think about it, I wasn't angry at her for...
Was it really that emotional?
I was angry at myself. I had caused this. I had caused her to turn into this shell of a pony. So I lashed out at her, and I didn't hold back. I had just had enough of everything. But so had she. I hated the fact that she found out about that power. And I hated that she had come to this town. Of all the towns. I hated the fact that I dwelled on something so horrible that I couldn't even realize I had something amazing in front of me. I had become consumed by it. Curse just stood there. I could see her wincing at my words. They stung. She tried her best not to raise her voice at me, but every pony has their limits. It wasn't until I accused her of not truly loving me that I really hurt her. It's such a silly thing to even think about. I mean, she's still searching for me after all these years. I was just running high on emotions, and let's be honest, I wasn't thinking. It was then that Curse shouted back at me, and those eyes of hers, those crimson eyes just glimmered, and I stared unblinking. It was in that exact moment that I knew what she had done. They shimmered so intensely, far more than any other time I had seen. And when she stormed off upstairs, that's when everything began to fade to black. That murky black ink began to spread everywhere. I was screaming, yelling for her to come back.
Wow.
It was already too late.
Must have been that scary.
And it was my own fault, too. Everything that happened up to that point was on my shoulders, and it was my weight to carry. I had destroyed anything left when I used her for the sake of my own petty revenge. All in all, it was a fair punishment for the crime I committed. I was convinced that this was, well, the place you go in the downward direction. The thing is, I could still see her sometimes. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. The murkiness occasionally fades away, and I can see her. I thought it was the murkiness just fooling me, like tempting me with something I can't have, but it really was her. She looked so miserable. I watched her as she changed into that bitter, hollowed thing that you saw earlier.
Really?
She can't see me.
Was it really that scary?
Her, despite how much I've tried calling out to her. I've watched her this whole time. The times she's traveled trying to find me, the moments she thought she was genuinely alone, crying to herself about how she ruined me. Us. This was the worst torture of all, watching her fall further and further away from what she was because of me. If only I could just tell her that I'm right here. I haven't left her side this whole time. Well, with the exceptions of guiding you ponies to the other side, but she doesn't get it. I'm still here. I'm always going to be here.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't give to just say that I'm
She's right, Lost.
sorry, and
She really
still
does
love
need
her.
you.
And yes, even with her looking like that, I don't care. She'll always be my Kersey. It was around the time when she really started lashing out at other ponies that they started showing up here. The dead ones. For a second, I honestly thought that I was dead, but it wasn't until I tried to follow one of them to the other side that I realized I'm just stuck. I can't go anywhere. I'm always here, waiting for something to change. Maybe she needs to do something on her end, or maybe there's something on mine. Either way, I'm not able to leave this black murkiness. But you know what? Being a downer doesn't get a pony anywhere. So I have to believe that there's a way for me to get out somehow. I guess you could say I still have some kind of hope. Not much of it, mind you. But still. And it was apparent very quickly that this place doesn't work the same as Equestria. Time doesn't mean anything here. I met pony number 711, and he was born 300 years apart from you, number 712. Oh, don't bother me with your name. I won't remember it anyway. Still, I did get to see Curse's regression on a fairly time-correct scale, and it broke my heart every time. She's become this broken husk of what she was, wearing that stupid mask and just hurting all of those ponies. Part of me even wonders if she feels remorse anymore, like she's been
Dang, now
consumed with sorrow.
this video is starting to get me
I don't
emotional.
think she knows right from wrong, or even cares. I knew there was no going back when she killed that first group of travelers. All she wanted to do was relive those good years, but of course they weren't going to have any of that. She doesn't even try to tell them stories like that anymore. The nice ones of memories of her and I. It's always just grim and death now. I miss the stories brought to life, not just by magic with her horn, but by the magic inside all of us. The hope that anything was possible. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to right that wrong. You're dead. She killed you with her own words, and that's why I'm here. To help you poor ponies get somewhere where these stories can't hurt you anymore. Well, here's our stop. See, I've got this thing timed out perfectly for our little journey here. I hope that answered a few of your questions, though I'm sure you have hundreds more. And I want you to know that I am sorry. Sorry that you had to cross over to this. Sorry that you had to hear
I
all
don't
the
blame you,
twisted
Mac.
tales I wrote those
And I
many
forgive
years
you.
ago. And sorry that, well, that I lied. Oh, I wasn't lying about my story. It would kind of be difficult to lie
Okay,
about all of that.
the picture's moving.
It's true. But remember that light that you were headed towards earlier? Well, I couldn't have you wandering off towards it. You're far too important to me for that.
What's going on?
Besides, ponies who end up here always seem to love hearing stories. What better way to get you to follow me than with a story? You have been a very good listener, pony number 712. There are some ponies who don't always listen to me.
Such a big number.
They leave and they follow that light in the middle. So rude. But not you. No, you stayed and you listened, and now you're here. Oh, you should know, I've kind of made a little bit of a deal that I have to hold up my end of the bargain. The more souls I get, the happier he is. And the happier he is, the sooner I can get back to be with my beloved again.
Who's he?
I need to break this curse so that I can fix everything. You know, he even said if I get a few more, I might be able to completely revert her back. So, if anything, your death wasn't in vain. At least you got to hear a story again before the end. Who doesn't love a good story? So,
I hear screaming.
Sorry, but I guess I always like the grim and gory stories more for a reason.
Whoa.
Blood and viscera. That was all that was left around the single mare.
Okay, now
that
we have
stood
a
in the middle
Goody
of the
Serenade.
campsite. Her head hung low as she trembled silently. The only movement within sight came from the fiery embers that dimly lit the surroundings. Broken bodies had created a bloodbath, staining the ground with their tattered remains. The stench of gore filled her nostrils as she took slow, steady breaths. She lifted her head slightly, watching the fire intently with her glowing, crimson eyes. They did not move or waver from the dancing flame as they shone through the tattered leather mask that remained on her face. That mask, old, bloody, ruined, just like her. Those simple thoughts ran through her mind as she shut her eyes, listening to the howling of the night.
Wolves?
Her weathered, torn cloak flailed about, the wind rushing around her. She slowly lifted her forehoof to her muzzle, dragging it along the end of the worn leather. The stitching held together the opening of where her mouth would be, sealing it completely. She wondered how ponies could hear her words through such a mask. Things like that didn't matter anymore. Nothing did. All that mattered
Nothing at all?
was that she was alone.
I hear ya.
Nothing would undo what she had done. She knew that too much time had passed for any form of redemption. She was a damned soul. When she gradually opened her eyes, she had been given a new clarity of the world. No longer was it shrouded in darkness, nor did she have a limited point of view. She glanced down and realized something was in her hoof. That wretched piece of cloth laid in the center of her hoof. Empty eye sockets staring back at her as she regarded it, dumbfounded. She took her forehoof and ran it along her bare muzzle. She could feel the wind brushing gently over
dead
her
pony?
cheeks as tears began to fall from her yellow, crimson eyes. As she began to sob harder, a ghostly figure of a pink mare stood before her, a sad expression
Mag's
upon
dead?
her face.
Soon, Kersey. I will find you. I promise.
The mare whispered to herself as she watched her beloved shout to the heavens, demanding an answer as to where her magpie was.
Where is she? Where is she?
She's dead, isn't she? Well then. Excuse me? Wow. So, at first, the Lost Narrator was reading the first part of the story, and then Magpie Pony just appeared, and then she explained a whole story where, she fell in love with Curse, and then after a moment, we get to realize that she was like a dark spirit, and then she likes the gory stories. And then we get to hear Goody Serenade narrate, and then we found out that Magpie Pony is dead, and Losty's trying to find her. Whew. Oh boy, can't wait to check out the sequel to this story. Once again, guys, thanks for watching, and ahoy!